What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Early Read BetSided's college football betting show. Conference Championship week is here, and we are here to give you some winners. We are joined today by Bill Radjewski at CFB Data on Twitter. Of course, the creator of collegefootballdata.com, a website I use at least weekly to generate some numbers and stuff like that, pull some advanced numbers. I mean, Bill's site is one of a kind. I truly appreciate the work he does, and I truly appreciate that he's on the show. Bill is also a Michigan fan, I just found out. So he is in a good mood after Michigan beats Ohio State, adding another wrinkle into the college football playoff discussion. Another crazy rivalry week. I mean, teams are kind of dropping like flies here. We're going to get into it, but we see Clemson eject itself in the college football playoff race. TCU maybe locks up a college football playoff spot. Caleb Williams locks up the Heisman and maybe also gets USC a college football playoff spot. So a lot to discuss. Bill, I know you're very busy. I appreciate you coming on the show. How's it going? And I will start by asking you, when did you think Michigan was actually going to win the game? At what long 50-yard touchdown was it where you're like, oh, we might actually have them today. We might actually do this. We might pull this upset.
Well, Reed, yeah, as you can imagine, I'm feeling pretty good today. It's been a pretty good week. Just been watching a lot of highlight videos on YouTube nonstop, hitting up some Ohio State forums. It's pretty great to read some of that after the last 20 years as a Michigan fan in this rivalry. But yeah, to answer your question, I was not as pessimistic going into the game as a lot of people were, or I would say a lot of the non-Michigan fans were.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely gave an edge to Ohio State. I think my model had Ohio State at 4.5.
Okay.
Which I think is pretty close to what SP Plus and other advanced models had them at. But hearing the punditry and everybody talk, everyone was expecting like a really easy win for Ohio State. But I will say, little rough early going in the game there. CJ Stroud just drives down the field. Marvin Harrison Jr. Was just completely unreal. I I was a little bit worried, how easily they drove down, and then a little bit worried, finding out that Blake Corum, Michigan's Heisman hopeful, was not going to play. We were really optimistic about him all week. It sounded like he was going to be good to go. Got in for a couple plays, was not effective. But yeah, to answer your question, I felt pretty good. I said to myself, Michigan all year has been a second half team. I said they get to halftime and it's a close score. They're going to be good. So went into halftime down 3. I was feeling pretty good. And then I think when they first took their first lead, of the second half was when
that broken coverage.
Yeah.
I will say I think it was the 1st and 35 after the 2 penalties on the same play for Ohio State. They get down. It's like 4th and 6 at around like 45 or so, slight plus territory. And you see CJ Stroud is like, all right, like we're good. Like we're gonna go for this. We got this. And Ryan Day is like, no, we're gonna punt. We're gonna punt.
No.
After that, I was like, this is not going well. And we see in the comments, put some respect on JJ McCarthy's name. I was beating the drum. I didn't know if Michigan was going to be able to take the top off the Ohio State defense, and I was 100% wrong. They absolutely could have. I said they were outside the top 100 in pass plays over 10-plus yards, 20-plus yards. They were outside the top 90. So I didn't think they had that vertical passing game to beat Ohio State.
I mean, you figure you got Blake Corum, you got Donovan Edwards, Jim Harbaugh saw offense. They didn't need to pass. I mean, they didn't. But if watching JJ McCarthy all year, it does not come as a shock. His numbers were a little misleading. His receivers were not helping him in the past few weeks. But if you look at things like guys that chart, these things like MGO Blogs, the big Michigan site, charting things like downfield success rate, where it kind of accounts for receiver drops. He's been putting up, even in his worst outings, like really solid, great numbers. Yeah, but and also like nobody really stacked the box and dared Michigan, JJ McCarthy to beat them with his arm until Ohio State with
Ohio State did, and they got
saw how that went. We saw how that went.
That was so. Of course, Michigan beats Ohio State in the horseshoe 45-23, kind of the big data point of last week. But there was a lot of things that also fell into place for the college football playoff. Clemson loses to South Carolina in embarrassing fashion, in my opinion. I mean, I was talking last week how it was kind of setting up for Clemson to maybe sneak their way into this top 4 after everything went wrong for them against Notre Dame. They've kind of underwhelmed compared to the elite talents this year. They can't get it done against South Carolina. No hangover for Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. They go in as 2 touchdown underdogs and beat Clemson. So it's kind of setting up, in my opinion, just to reset here, the odds to win the national championship. Georgia, clear favorite, minus 160. Michigan, plus 300. And then you see, I saw as of this morning, Ohio State is still the third choice at 10-1. USC and TCU are both 12-1. Bama, a long shot at plus 4,000. So things are starting to set up here. So, Bill, what I was going to ask you about is Georgia and Michigan, I think, are in, even with losses, which I think we could both agree are very unlikely. They're both three possession favorites. To me, I think TCU is in, even with a loss, unless, of course, they lose big, like blowout fashion. If TCU even loses a competitive game to Kansas State, which is possible, I still think TCU's in. I think if USC loses, I think Ohio State gets in over USC. I think that's going to be the real big debate here. Is the top four already set? So, Bill, I'll ask you, do you think the top four is set, or do you think Ohio State has a prayer? I guess we could throw Alabama in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think they certainly have a prayer. I agree with that. I think Michigan, Georgia clearly locks. I think TCU should be a lock.
Yeah.
Should be a lock. I mean, one loss, Power 5 championship game appearance. As far as Ohio State versus USC, if USC loses, honestly, I mean, I'm really curious to see how these things shake out with the rankings tonight with the committee. I mean, I've been pretty shocked by some of the committee's choices already this year. Some of the the one thing I've noticed is they haven't really been doing a really good job of explaining some of their rhyme or reason.
Of course not.
For some of their ordering. Like I think they had Clemson at like 2 or 3 early in the year, and everyone's like, how is Clemson a 2 or a 3 team? Everyone knew it. Everyone knew they were not a 2 or like a 4, So I mean, the LSU initial LSU ranking kind of blew everybody's mind, having them a top 10 team. They justified it by beating Bama, but then of course not so much this week. So but yeah, no, I mean, to your point about I mean, with this committee, I could see them putting Bama ahead of Ohio State. Should Bama be ahead of Ohio State? No, they shouldn't. I don't think they should. But with this committee, I could see it.
I think I personally don't think Bama has a chance of getting in. I think it's indicated the odds are plus 4,000. I think TCU is way in. It's a matter of if USC can beat Utah. Because if you just look at the resumes, USC will have 2 losses to a 3-loss Utah team. Understand it's on the road, it's on neutral, but Ohio State only has 1 loss. It's at home against Michigan, who is now the number 2 team in the country. They both beat Notre Dame. And Ohio State went to Penn State and beat them by double digits. That's kind of the best win of any of these teams here. Ohio State, I mean, Penn State, they might flirt with the top 10 this week with how they're playing. They don't have necessarily a bad loss on their resume. So I think the committee is going to justify putting Ohio State in. And it kind of sets up Georgia, Ohio State 1-4 potentially. I think that's the worst thing Georgia wants. I still think Ohio State, I mean, listen, they closed a 9-point favorite against Michigan. I think Georgia, they would much rather see USC and this luck. We're going to get to them. They're luck bucks, Caleb Williams circus show. I don't think they want to see Ohio State just from a pure talent perspective, in my opinion. What do you think? I guess who would Georgia or who would, I guess, the top 3 teams not want to see in USC or Ohio State? Are you out on Ohio State or you still believe in them?
I think Ohio State could certainly do damage. I mean, I'm kind of curious to see how, if they had the opportunity to get into to get into the playoff, I'd be curious to see how they respond after that second straight beat down and on their home turf.
A lot of what is it? Was it Cardell Jones, Ezekiel Elliott? They kind of snuck in also, and then they ended up going nuts and winning the whole thing. So I could see a lot of that like parallel. I don't know if CJ Stroud has kind of. I'm not a CJ Stroud guy. I don't know if he has
same here.
I don't know if he has that next gear, but I could definitely see a team like Ohio State with that talent getting hot at the right time. And, I wouldn't say Georgia's this unstoppable force like they were last year. I thought last year's Georgia team was much better. I know you do your own ratings. But I think Ohio State, if they get in, are incredibly dangerous. They
are, they're dangerous. But like I did that to that point, I'll say whether it's a Stroud thing or a Day thing, they definitely don't really have that edge. Like you see what happens under Day, they get down early. They don't really have the fight in them to fight back. So I think they could do damage against Georgia, but if they get down early against Georgia, like you saw against Michigan this year and Michigan last year, that's kind of the big X factor
Yeah.
there. Can they keep themselves? Can they get a lead early and keep the momentum going? Otherwise, I think you're going to see them fold.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So some great stuff on the college football playoff there. Let's see who's going to make the college football playoff, because we just basically broke down. It's pretty binary at this point how this is all going to go. So let's start here with our picks for conference championship week. Just a quick recap. 3-4 week last week for yours truly. Still great though. 55, 46, and 1 against the spread on early read plays. Of course, jam that subscribe button, jam that like button, give us 5 stars. Really appreciate it if you made some money with us this season. So let's cap off the meaningful games before we get to bowl season with a few more winners. And we start on Saturday afternoon, Big 12 title game, undefeated TCU in a rematch against Kansas State. Current market, TCU around a 2.5, 3-point favorite, total of 62. Bill, I'll start with you. Kansas State with Will Howard, better or worse than Kansas State with Adrian Martinez?
Ooh. I mean, I think better too. You figure what was it? It was this game, TCU Kansas, where Adrian Martinez was first hurt, right? And
yes,
that's kind of the adversity they faced.
Will Howard ended up getting hurt also, and went to a third string.
Yeah.
Kansas State was up 2 scores. I was going to bring up that box score, but Kansas State was up 2 scores in Fort Worth, about to hand TCU their first loss. Turnover, injuries, all that stuff kind of goes awry. TCU ends up pulling away 38-28. So that's kind of this setting up the rematch. I personally think the Kansas State passing game is a little bit more alive, though, with Howard over Martinez. So how do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, I think I agree. And again, I'm looking at the previous matchup again. I mean, it's a big change when the quarterback, your starting quarterback, you game plan to go in with, gets knocked out in the middle. I know it was a 10-point double-digit, TCU come from behind win, but my metrics show that game was not it was way closer than the final score indicated. In fact, if you look at the statistics from the previous matchup and analyze all the advanced stats, my post-game win expectancy model gave a slight tilt towards Kansas State.
Okay.
Said that if you played that exact same game over again, the exact same stats, Kansas State would be favored to win about 59% of the time. And that of course was in Fort Worth. So, I actually have the Kansas State money line for this. I think it's gonna be a really close game, but I think Kansas State just edges them out.
Yeah, no, I think I saw one of the questions asking like if TCU future holders should hedge. I'm typically not a hedge person unless it's like life-changing money or anything. If you feel that, I mean, if Kansas State, I don't think a 3 is going to pop on this game, because I think, like you said, people are keen to this. That Kansas State was in that game, winning that game, and the score got lopsided at the end. TCU got some momentum, but this game's going to be tight. And TCU, the pressure's on them. Kansas State's coming in with house money. Chris Kleiman, one of the best coaches against the spread. I'm actually looking though at the under 62. This total was 54.5. What was it, 5-6 weeks ago? I think that the Kansas State offense is better with Will Howard, but like you said, they could game plan for Howard now. They know what's coming. They know that this passing game is legit, and neither team plays fast, both in the bottom third in terms of plays per minute. And I like TCU's 3-3-5 defense with Joe Gillespie, like friend of the program almost, Joe Gillespie, the TCU defensive coordinator. They're top 40 in EPA per rush on defense. Their defense also played a lot better of late. They shut down Texas in Austin to 10 points. The closing total last week between Kansas State and Kansas was 62. I don't think that this total should be the same, because both defenses are better than Kansas's defense. I think that you're going to see kind of a defensive struggle here. Slow start, early kickoff on a neutral field. Last week, TCU ramped the score against Iowa State, scored 62 points, also only gained 377 yards. They had 2 pick sixes against that game. So I think that this is inflating the total due to recent performances. So I'm going to take the under 62 as my favorite bet in the Big 12 Championship. Bill, any thoughts there on the total?
Yeah, I think I can really see it going. I mean, again, look at this match. Like it's really hard to predict this matchup, just because to me, looking at the advanced matchup, these teams are like almost like mirror images of each other.
Mm-hmm.
One of the users of my site put his name at JBudDavis. You want to check him out? Anyone that's on, he puts out these weekly, opponent adjusted EPA stats, accounting for strength of schedule,
Mm-hmm.
and he literally has his most recent chart of these teams you look at their offense and their defensive efficiencies, they're almost a mirror image. You cannot
Wow.
really get much closer than these two teams. Like, TCU has a slightly better offense, Kansas State slightly better defense. So I mean, I really have no idea what are we in for a shootout, or are we in for a defensive battle, just normal game? I could see anything here.
For sure. So let's
Yeah.
talk to the other significant to the college football playoff. I would say the college football playoff hopes in the balance, some would say. Pac-12 Championship, Utah, USC from Las Vegas. This is Friday night, 8 p.m. kick. USC laying 3, total of 67. Bill, I'll start with you. Of course, this is the rematch from that thriller. I would say one of the games of the year and what was the craziest week of the year. Utah wins on the Cam Rising 2-point conversion to beat USC. Final score 43-42 rematch. Caleb Williams, I think, has the Heisman all but wrapped up. He's like minus $1 million. USC win. They're into the top 4. They're in the college football playoff. Does USC get it done in Vegas?
I think they do. Now I will say I do have, I have USC winning but not covering. In this
Okay,
game.
that's fair.
And again, this is based on my computer model, so
totally
blame the
fine.
computer if you. But yeah, so my computer model, it has USC winning, I think, by like a point. So it has it close, but not covering on this one. So I have Utah for the pick against the spread here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, look at that last game. I mean, Cam Rising kind of played out of his mind right at the end of that game. I remember watching that. Frankly, like yeah, one of the few Michigan games I was really able to really watch a lot this year. I get really busy with, as you can imagine, with the site and everything. I don't get to watch as much football, but I remember watching this one, and Rising just played out of his mind. Close game. I believe it was in Salt Lake City, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it played really evenly too. I think my model had Utah with a 60% post game win expectancy, similar to the other game, pretty close to a coin flip last time. Yeah, I think it's going to be another close game, another nail biter. Mm-hmm. And, talking about Caleb Williams, the Heisman runaway front runner. I mean, the question is, does he have his Heisman moment? I mean, we know the Heisman's largely about narratives these days. Does he step up, have that Heisman moment and take USC to the playoffs? I think he does. I think he leads them there in a really close nail biter.
I think we see this eye to eye because I'm a little concerned about this Utah team. I was really high on them going into the season. They kind of fell backwards into this game. I always love Utah. I always give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to take the points here just with the high total. I'm waiting on Dalton Kincaid's status, the tight end. He had 16 catches for over 200 yards against USC in this game in Salt Lake City. Him and Cam Rising, that was it. It was them two versus Caleb Williams, basically. He left last week's game against Colorado with an injury. Kyle Whittingham said, not serious. We'll see how it goes. Didn't rule him out, didn't rule him in. So I'm going to wait to bet on this one. I just think that this game should be more of a pick. I think, like you said, it was really tight in Salt Lake City. I don't think that much has changed that USC should now be laying 3. Utah was laying 3.5 at home in the first matchup. I think that this is a bit getting a little crazy. If Kincaid's out, this is probably a stay away. So I'd wait on this one. I always fade USC, and it feels like I have to do it again. They are plus 22 in turnover margin. That is 8 more than the next best team in Duke. The gap between Duke and another plus 8 in terms of turnover margin is a bunch of teams that are tied for 29th in the country. This is the craziest statistical anomaly I've ever seen. I mean, you want to talk last week against Notre Dame, one of the first drives of the game, Jordan Addison fumble, recovers it himself for a split second, gets knocked out again. They overturn the fumble call and say he had possession. They get it back. Meanwhile, Notre Dame driving to start the second half, get all the way into near red zone opportunity, fumble a handoff. Of course, USC falls on it, and then it's off to the races. So USC, I can't trust this defense to run away and kind of cover with margin. I know they've beaten up on a lot of teams. Their offense is kind of inevitable, but they don't play very fast, and they can't get enough stops against potent offenses. So if Kincaid's in and Cam Rising's correct, I think Utah's going to be able to push this here and keep this game close within, the field goal. It's a key number of 3. I mean, look at some of these numbers on USC. Top 10 or bottom 10 in success rate allowed, 110th in red zone touchdown percentage. When teams getting close, they are scoring 6 points. And maybe this is the game where the regression monster kind of catches up with USC, and maybe there's an inadvertent interception. Maybe a fumble gets away from them. And Utah got 19 pressures on Caleb Williams in this first matchup. no one's been able to sack him really. He's been able to run wild and make these crazy plays. Maybe Utah gets home in this game on a neutral site. So I'm taking the number with Utah for the sake of the show. I'm going to wait on Kincaid's status, but I lean towards Utah, and we'll see if USC could get some revenge. I think maybe they do. I'm not as confident in Utah as I was the first time around, but I think at a total of 67, you got to take the 3. You got to take the field goal there. So Bill sees a close game. I see a close game. We're both on Utah +3. So we're going to move to the underdog segment. We're both looking at some group of 5 conference championship games. So, Bill, I'll start with you. Rematch between UCF and Tulane. A few weeks ago, these teams met at Yeoman Stadium at Tulane. They're running it back now. A lot of questions around here, though. John Reese Plumlee left last week with a apparent hamstring injury. Some murky quotes from Gus Malzahn, so you're not going to hear much. Don't know how big the drop-off is between Plumlee and Mikey Keene. 2 different players for sure. But Bill, let's hear. How do you see the AAC championship going? Just to set the market, Tulane -3.5, total 56.5.
Yeah, my model, my computer model here has UCF by half a point.
Okay.
Again, you can't. I mean, maybe I should renege on that because obviously you can't really, with the one drawback to computer models, you can't really account for an injury to like a starting quarterback as well. So this one might be a little sus, but I mean, you figure last time wasn't that particularly close of a game. Again, I know UCF's down their QB, but that said, I like UCF against the spread, if not outright here. But again, huge wild card. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, I think something to keep in mind here also. Of course, they just met. Market there was Tulane closed a 1-point favorite in that game. They lost 38-31. UCF went up, I believe it was 28-7 in the first half. Tulane kind of scratched back in that game. So I thought UCF, I watched that game, bet on UCF. I kind of like them again here at over a field goal. I think Plumlee is pretty key to this game because Tulane's defense is more susceptible to the run game. Plumlee, a dual threat, Keene, more of a pocket passer. So I think maybe both play, they kind of sub them in and out based on the drive. So we'll see. I lean towards UCF. I also kind of lean towards the over. Again, 38-31 last game. So we'll see how it goes. Also, Willie Fritz potentially interviewing for the Georgia Tech job. That's the Tulane head coach. Maybe 1 foot out the door after he gets Tulane. I want to say it's their first conference championship game in like 20 years or so. So maybe he's got 1 foot out the door. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to go. This number's been crashing, but I have a future on Ohio to win the MAC. I've decided I'm not hedging, so this is kind of going to be my bet for this show because I'm just going to let it ride. I had Ohio preseason. I think it was like 14-1 or 16-1, something in the double digits. Letting it ride against Toledo. Ohio, they've been good to us all season. They lost Curtis Rourke, and I was a little nervous how this was going to go. CJ Howard's their backup, very different than Rourke, more of a dual threat, could run the ball. Looked great against Bowling Green. 196 yards through the air, pretty solid. Also had 65 on the ground and 3 rushing touchdowns. And he's facing a Toledo team that what's good here? What Jason Gandil just falling apart here. They lose to Bowling Green as 2 touchdown home favorites. Game it was back and they should have won it. Bowling Green scored in the final 30 seconds, but still 2 touchdown favorite. That's a bad look. Then they go on the road last week and they lose a favorite more than a touchdown to Western Michigan, who just fired their coach. So what is the psyche of this team with starting quarterback Taquan Finn? He's been in and out of the lineup for the past few weeks. Tucker Gleason, the backup, he has a broken hand. He looked like a mess last week when he came in for Finn. So I'm riding the momentum here. Ohio, they've won 7 straight conference games since losing their opener to Kent State. So they haven't won a MAC championship since 1968. I'm riding the momentum. They're an underdog. I don't really see it with Toledo. Banged up at quarterback. Bill, I know you're an Ohio guy, so maybe you could comment on it. But
yeah,
I'm riding the Bobcats. I think they get off the schneid. First title since '68. Let's go. I'm not hedging. I'm riding.
Yeah, I think you're right. The
vibes are there. The vibes are cooking.
Yeah,
right now
for sure. Based on pure vibes, I'll tell you the numbers definitely favor Toledo here. But again, without that context of starting quarterback, backup quarterback being banged up, it wouldn't surprise me to see Toledo rally a little bit. I mean, they have something to play for in a conference championship.
Of course.
Maybe that gives them a spark. But I think you're right. I think Ohio's got the vibes. They've got the motivation. They got the momentum.
Yeah, I think it's not. First of all, Curtis Rourke was playing Ohio would have won this. They would have boat raced them. They would have absolutely they would have destroyed them. This is gonna be a different approach though, with CJ Harris under center, ground game intensive, and Toledo's defense kind of susceptible against the run. 117 in explosive rush defense, 121st in red zone touchdown percentage allowed. So I think you're gonna see Ohio get the push here, and again, momentum right there. I'm gonna ride with the Bobcats there. So there's our underdog best bets. Bill's taking UCF. Hopefully John Reese Plumlee goes, and I'm going to take Ohio on the money line. And now we're going to move to our Trust Me Bet of the Week. This is kind of random. You just got to, it might not be the prettiest. You just got to trust us. This is what we do. You got to just take Bill's advice here. So Bill, we're talking ACC championship game. This game has lost a lot of luster, we'll say, after Clemson melts down. North Carolina had Drake May, who was a Heisman favorite for 20 minutes. They lose to Georgia Tech with their third stringer. They lose to North Carolina State last week with their fourth stringer, basically, me at quarterback. So who's getting off the mat here in a game that isn't as important, but I guess it's for a conference championship, so we'll see how it goes. But how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I feel really icky about this, but I've just because of haven't really been sold on Clemson at all this year, But that said, that North Carolina defense is just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, looking at all of Power Five, I think really the only defenses that are clearly worse looking at the metrics are Colorado and Arizona. So they're like number 3 or 4th from the bottom. I have Clemson covering against North Carolina in this one.
Yeah, I lean your way too. I don't know if I could get their lane over a touch. I was targeting Clemson team total over like 37.5. This reminds me a lot of the Notre Dame North Carolina game earlier this season. Notre Dame just ran all over them, like 5.6 yards per carry, I think, put up 45 points in Chapel Hill. I could see this game like an over game. I'm just, Clemson, the only reason why I'm concerned laying over a touchdown, let up like 40 plus to Wake, let up 30 plus to South Carolina, like explosive offense. I just wonder if North Carolina is going to push the pace. But then again, I don't think North Carolina is getting any stops in this game. That's why I lean towards the team total over. So do you have like a score projection? I'm just curious if you have that up in front of you. Like, do you see like an over game? I think it's 63.5 right now.
Yeah, I don't have like specific team.
I put you on the spot there. That's on me.
Yeah, you did put me on the spot. And I'll say this is one instance I'm actually going against my numbers. My numbers have Clemson to win by 7.5, so 7-8 points, so like right at covering. But again, I think just looking, I'm going against the model here.
Yeah, for sure.
I think they cover. Just looking at that, how bad that North Carolina defense, Clemson's offense hasn't been the greatest at times, but
they can run all over them.
But I mean, they've got an above average defense, and I think I see them covering here.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, my trust me bet. We're gonna go under 51.5 in Michigan Purdue. Key number of 51, and I know everyone's gonna remember Michigan just took the top off this Ohio State defense. 4 or 5 touchdowns of 50 plus yards, just absolutely gashed them. This Purdue team is built, though, kind of unlike Ohio State. They are built to kind of limit explosive plays. 21st in terms of EPA per play on the defensive side of the ball. Purdue is 11th in pass rate, and that's not because they want to pass. That's because they don't have a running game. So they just pass at will, and Michigan's secondary should be able to limit this. Top 5 in EPA per pass this season. And I don't know what Michigan's incentive is to run up the score. They already proved their point last week. Blake Corum banged up. Donovan Edwards banged up. Shoemaker was a game-time decision. Offensive lineman Keegan was also a game-time decision. So I don't think you're going to see Michigan run it up like they did last year in the Big Ten Championship against Iowa, try and gash Ohio State. I think that they just want to kind of go up 2-3 scores and sit on the ball. They're bottom 10 in terms of plays per minute this season, so they're not really running with a ton of tempo anyway. Key number of 51. I'll take the under here. I think this looks a lot something, 27-13, 31-13. I see this game more in the 40s. These are two teams that have been totaled in the 40s a lot in their recent Big Ten games. Bill, Michigan guy, any thoughts on the game? We haven't spoken Big Ten Championship yet, so any thoughts here?
I really like this pick here, taking the under. I mean, just looking at Jim Harbaugh, his philosophy and how he runs his offense, very ball control. He does not run up the score. I mean, Ohio State's a whole different
Yeah, that's
animal.
different. That's like in its own. You could put that aside. Like it's Ohio State. That's
Yeah.
different.
I mean, the Iowa game last year kind of got out of control too. There was like the floodgates just opened for the Michigan offense in the last year's Big Ten championship. He's the Harbaugh offense. It's all about the ball control. He likes to get ahead, and then he likes to control the ball, take the clock off. You've seen a lot of their games this year. They've done exactly that. Like he does not go for style points. Never goes for style points.
They don't need style points now. Like
they don't.
They did it. They're good. That's part of the handicap here. Is I make it like I think 50.5. So like I don't have like some crazy number edge. Like I'm not projecting this to be 44. I just think stylistically this is going to play out like an under game.
Oh yeah, I mean, I look at kind of like it kind of reminds me of like the Michigan Nebraska game earlier this year.
Same exact, yeah, 100%.
Like I think this final score was like 30-10 or thereabouts. I kind of see this game the same score, around 40 points, 30-10, something like that. Michigan just gets an early lead, just tucks it in, tries to run it out, and get in and just get their way to the playoff. But then of course you have the spoiler maker factor. I think Purdue is like 4-1 against top 5 teams in the last few years.
I know that's West Lafayette though. That's what people get going there. That's like a house of horrors for top 5 teams. That in Kinnick, Iowa. On a neutral though might be a little different. We'll see though. We'll see. No, that was great stuff there on the Big Ten Championship. So there's our segments. We're into some best of the rest here. I mean, we pretty much hit on almost all the games. We'll get to the next few. Just to run through our bets real quick. Bill is taking Kansas State money line against TCU, Utah +3 against USC, UCF +3.5 against Tulane, and Clemson -8 against North Carolina. And then for me in the Big 12 Championship, I'm going to take under 62. I'm going to grab Utah with the points +3 against USC. Ohio money line +105 against Toledo, and I'm going to take the under 51.5 in Michigan Purdue. So 2 more bets for me here in our best of the rest segment. Bill, if you have any other ones you want to rattle off, feel free. But I'm going to start UTSA North Texas over 67.5. I think this trickled up to 68 today. Still good at 68. I pegged this closer to like 71. Each team top 20 in terms of plays per minute. This UTSA offense is just electric with Frank Harris. Last year, when they won the conference title, it was all about Sincere McCormick in the running game. Frank Harris had been lights out, completing 67% of his passes. The Roadrunners offense scoring more than 3 points per drive. They've been awesome. North Texas offense, meanwhile, they have a sick offensive line. They're top 20 in sacks allowed. I think they're going to get the push up front. And you look at this UTSA defense, you could beat them over the top. Bottom 20 in explosive pass and run plays. Like I said, both teams like to play fast. This total was 72.5 last time they played earlier this season. UTSA won 31-27. A lot of drives got stalled there in kind of the green zone. I think it was like single digits for both teams at half. Then it got going in the second half. With a total of 72.5, I think this is a bit too much of an overreaction. So I'll take the over 67.5 with UTSA North Texas. And then my last one, this went through a key number 17. I'll still lay it though. Georgia -17.5 against LSU. I didn't buy into LSU when they went on this run against Alabama. I faded them the last few weeks. Now Jaden Daniels, inexplicably in the game last week, gets hurt. He's in a walking boot. Brian Kelly says he's going to play, but if he's in a walking boot week of the game, that means he's not 100%. He has over 800 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns on the ground. He needs his legs, and you're going up against Georgia of all teams. This is not going to be pretty. I think LSU gets boat raced. Weak point of the Tigers defense, bottom half nationally in EPA per rush. Georgia, I think that they're going to run all over them. Of course, one of the best rush offense in the country. They haven't, I guess, had like that lights out victory where they really ran it up on a team. They beat the crap out of Tennessee, but scoreline didn't show that. I think they want to one-up Michigan after they beat Ohio State. I think they want to run the score up. So it's 17.5 now. I'd still lay it. I'd make this game closer to 20, honestly, and that's not even adjusting for Daniels being hobbled. So like I said, UTSA North Texas over 67.5 and Georgia -17.5. Bill, any other games we didn't get to you want to hit on? We're going to answer some questions in a few minutes, but anything else you want to touch while we get some questions pulled up?
Yeah, I mean, I would just go on the 2 games that you just brought up. Same here. Looking at UTSA versus North Texas. My model has UTSA at projected 12.5 spread. So definitely taking the points there. Georgia game, I'm actually looking back that I thought the Georgia Tech game, Georgia Tech was much closer than it ended up being. I don't know
Yeah.
where I was. I was probably too busy celebrating the Michigan victory on Saturday. I thought that was much closer. So, my model actually has, has Georgia, not covering for that, only winning by
Okay.
a 10.3. But, um, but again, I might, go against that, just, like I said, I thought that the GT game was much closer. I know they played Kentucky really close the week before. Um, but yeah, other than that, not a lot of other games to pick from this week.
Yeah, no, there's
Yeah.
two games. I'm just gonna bring them up before we answer
Yeah.
one question in the chat. But Coastal Troy, this number shifted all the way to like 10.5 Troy because Grayson McCall's obviously been hurt. Game time decision. Jamie Chadwell said we'll know on Wednesday. This is of course being recorded on Tuesday, so we don't know his status. I did see this morning though, went from 10.5 back down to 8.5. So maybe some people are thinking McCall, who I believe was a high ankle sprain. They said he would miss 3 to 6 weeks. He's been out 4 weeks, so this is kind of the time that he would maybe return. So maybe some people are expecting McCall back in the lineup. Any thought there? This is probably a stay away for me just with McCall's status. If it gets back over 10, though, I kind of lean towards Coastal just because I don't trust Troy's offense to really win with margin.
Yeah, I mean, my model here has, a close one here. I think it looks like I have Troy winning by a field goal.
Okay. That's where
But
the
yeah,
opener, the
yeah,
opener I think was like
mhm,
4. And then of course McCall being out, that throws everything out of whack. He's
yeah.
so important. So
It's kind of crazy. It seems like there's a lot of big injuries during
oh yeah,
conference championship
there's a
week.
bunch
So,
of a bunch
um,
of key guys that are like we have no idea if they're gonna play.
yeah, I mean, you see where some of the computer models could fall short. So I'll be really
Yeah.
curious to see how these hold up. My computer model's done pretty decently, you know, uh, for most of this year. I'm kind of curious to see how these injuries and everything affect it.
Yeah,
Hopefully
absolutely. And
not
then
too
the
bad.
last one,
Yeah.
Fresno at Boise. Boise, this is looking like a juice 3.5 point home favorite against Fresno. I mean, two teams that have been in just complete. I mean, like early season, Hayner gets hurt. Hank Bachmeier, the Boise State quarterback, he's transferring. They fire their offensive coordinator. Boise now shot out of a cannon. Both teams have won I have like 7 of 8 or whatever. So they're both in the Mountain West Championship game. Any thought here, Bill, on this one? I'm kind of leaning towards the Boise side, but this might be just a total stay away.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the efficiency numbers and the advanced metrics, I think Boise clearly has an advantage
Mm,
on defense
yeah.
over a Fresno. My model has Boise winning by 2 points, so not covering. But yeah, again, just looking at the charts, looking at the offensive defensive metrics, I think there is a pretty clear advantage to Boise heading into this one.
Yeah. And then Robbie April asked in the chat, North Dakota State plus 550 win the FCS title. Bill, do you do FCS numbers on your site?
Oh boy.
This is out of my realm. I'm out of this one.
So you know what? I've had people requesting FCS stuff for the longest time. Started adding FCS, lines and data and statistics. This season is the first season that I've made it available on my site.
Okay.
However, I myself have not really, done any of my own advanced numbers or models on a lot of FCS stuff yet.
All right. So, Robbie,
Yeah.
go check out
Yeah.
collegefootballdata.com and you could come to your own conclusions. But maybe next year we'll do like an
Yeah.
FCS segment and see if we can get anything. Maybe like even when they're playing the FBS teams and stuff. But yeah, no, thank you to everyone in the comments who is, getting involved in the chat. Just a few more housekeeping notes before we wrap up here. Bowl schedule. So we're going to do December 6th. We're going to have some content out on some bowl pick'em stuff. The bowls are going to be released on Sunday and maybe into Monday. But next week, we will have some bowl content for you. Then we're going to do a live show December 13th with bowl games and college football playoff semifinal previews. And then we'll be back on January 4th in the new year to talk some national title previews, breakdowns, everything you're going to need. We'll do a little small episode there. But Bill, can't thank you enough for coming on the show. That's at CFB Data on Twitter. collegefootballdata.com is his website. You can check out all my plays for conference championship week on my bet stamp at RW33 there. And a big shout out to Sean Daly behind the scenes, producing the show and putting it all together. So until then, We will see you next week for our College Bowl Pick'em show. Have a great conference championship week and may all your bets hit.